Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. Gunnar Trommer, Vice President, Marketing, Business Development and Customer Service, Soterra Wireless.
Good morning, everyone. A lot of familiar faces, and I already had a chance to connect with some of them during the morning and in yesterday's session, but also some faces that I haven't seen before, which means that the family driving that digital revolution is still expanding, which is great. So for those of you who haven't seen Soterra or Visimobile, I'll just give a quick recap, and then I'm actually going to focus a bit on some of the learnings that we made along the way of introducing our product to the market. So that's what we do. The product is called Visimobile, so it's a wrist-worn vital signs monitor. It sits on the patient's wrist. There are two sensors extending from it, one to the base of the thumb, one goes to the chest for an ECG. And we have, I believe, last time I checked, the only monitor in the market with ICU level quality for non-ICU patients. So you get the same resolution, the same accuracy as if you were in the ICU, but you're not, and you're still mobile, and you have a wirelessly transmitting device keeping you safe. That's really the core of the value proposition, along with workflow improvements, along with throughput improvements, etc. So we're in the hospital right now. We're monitoring those patients that don't have monitoring at the current stage per the standard of care. So for those in the general med surg floors, those patients who get Q4 type discontinuous monitoring, every 4 hours the nurse or nurse assistant would come in, spot check you, but then nobody knows what's going on in between. And when you look at the demographic changes, older patients, more comorbidities, more complex procedures, etc., potent drugs, so those patients are really fragile, and there's a lot of evidence out there that those patients actually would benefit from continuous monitoring to keep them safe. So we've been here a number of times at WLSA. WLSA has been a great partner to us, so I wanted to talk about a bit what happened since last year's conference, and also what progress we made and what learnings we made along the way. So last year when we were here, we actually didn't have the system 510K clearance. We got that in Q3 last year, which was a great event, obviously, for the company. We then used the Q4 of last year to kind of build our sales channel, the technical and clinical support behind it. We went through our beta testing phase, etc., and really went commercial in Q1 this year. We went live with the first hospital customer, which is Palomar Hospital, just up the road here a little bit, in their new Palomar Medical Center, a 1 billion 300-bed hospital. So it's a piece of art. It's really a display of how technology can improve healthcare, and we're very happy to kind of have our first installation ever at that hospital. We had been working with them over the last 3 years, really, so they were more of a development partner than anything. And also then we started selling in Q1, really, and given that the sales cycles typically in that patient monitoring segment is 9 or 12 months, we're actually making great progress. So we have a handful or so of POs. We are in roughly 24 hospitals for evaluation, either already going or scheduled. And we have quite a nice funnel pipeline of quotes outstanding. So we're making good progress on the commercial side. But obviously that came with a lot of learning as well. So I wanted to spend a few minutes on that. So in my mind, really one of the keys for us was to find the true pioneers, because we have a disruptive technology. We're changing the standard of care in the hospital as it stands right now. And so you really need to find those hospitals, those customers that have a pioneer mindset, meaning they are okay with walking with you through the phases where you will find issues with the product. Plan for it, because it's unavoidable, right? When you develop a medical product, it won't be perfect out of the gates. You can't test everything in the lab, and I think many of you made that experience as well. So, and that's why it's so important to have those true pioneers who understand their role in that process to kind of get you going, to improve the product. We definitely have a much better product because of our pioneer partners. One pioneer, for example, for us is Intermountain Healthcare. So they are testing the product, piloting the product in 2 of their hospitals. And despite the fact that it wasn't perfect out of the gates, I will openly say that, but they were so impressed with what we can do already and what the vision is that they even invested in the company. So and their CFO, Bert Zimmerly, joined our board. So that is a testament of you don't have to be perfect, but you have to do the right thing and kind of move along with those pioneer type customers. Very important to find these. The second piece, I think, for us was we initially thought, well, this is a great product. We can monitor literally everyone, so why not say that? But that actually was a learning for us. It kind of defeated the purpose a little bit because now I truly think you need to find your space. You need to really carve out your niche where you can create the biggest value for your customers and really be very, very targeted there. And what we found for our application inside the hospital, that is the post-surgical units and the oncology units, right? And we're really targeting that, and we see that everywhere we go, that it seems to resonate the best in terms of keeping patients safe. Why is that? Because those are typically the high opioid areas, so a lot of pain drugs. Patients are really fragile, and you also see that because you have a very high incident rate in those areas, oncology as well as post-surgical units. So that's where our product right now can create the biggest value. That doesn't mean that we won't expand from there, but one key learning was to really start small, focus, and then grow from there. Another thing which also goes back to the pioneering aspect was we kind of had the concept of sales being driven from the bottom up through a network of independent sales reps, but also from the top down, kind of going in at the C-level with our executives and also Soterra salespeople going into the C-level, which we actually get very good access to. But again, what we found was it's not one or the other, it's an and. So you really have to kind of bracket that from both sides, and you have to find your champion on the C-level, your sponsor if you like, but you also have to find the champion on the floor. Because when you want to introduce something as disruptive as our technology, and you really are trying to change the standard of care, you're changing policies, you're changing workflows, you're changing habits, right? And number one, you need someone on the high level to make those policy decisions. This won't happen on the floor level, but you also need the champion to be the change agent for you. Because this is something that again, change isn't easy, and that's probably true for everyone. But you need that change agent on the floor, kind of telling the nurses about the positives, because you're changing their habits. We're not making their life harder, but we're changing it a little bit, and that's hard to accept very often. And when you get those first positive incidents, meaning, for example, we captured an event that otherwise would have gone unnoticed. So as a patient gets off supplemental oxygen, SpO2 drops, nobody would have known that before, right? So now you have a trigger to tell the nurse, you should look after this patient to avoid something bad, really bad happening. Right now you can still intervene and keep the patient safe right on this floor, but if you let that go for 30 minutes or an hour, and again, there are 4 hours typically in between knowing what the patient's vital signs are in these areas, you might miss those events, and then something really severe can happen. And once you have a number of those events, and it actually happens pretty quickly to get to 1, 2, 3, 4 over a few weeks after going live, after deploying, then you win the hearts and minds of the nurses because they understand the value of what you bring. But you really need that change agent. The last point on kind of the learning value proposition is, unless you have all 3 value propositions, meaning better for the patient, better for the hospital, better for the caregiver or clinician, you still don't have a product that will really sell big time. So I think you need to address all 3 of them. What that means is, for the patient, it's patient safety and being more comfortable, and we see that by having really satisfied patients, doing surveys, et cetera. Again, you can't make the nurse's life harder in what you introduce. If you do, they won't touch your product. And one perfect example is alarm management. So our alarm specificity is really good, and we had to get to that point because initially we had more alarms than was acceptable by the nurse. And at that point, when you basically call the nurse to the bedside, and remember, there's no alarming to start with, right? So right now they don't have any alarms, and you call them for no reason, and they go there and they're like, again, nothing, again, nothing. So then after a very short period of time, they will just say, this is not getting me any value. And we got to the point where we have a low level of alarms. It's very specific. When it calls them to the bedside, they know there's something happening and they need to intervene. So that's really one of the learning, how to get to the nurse and make an impact for her. And the last piece is obviously the economic value. It's great if you are nice to the nurse, nice to the patient, but you have to have an economic value proposition. And that economic value proposition for us, again, is very much around patient safety. So there are never events, there are patient safety goals that need to be met. If you have a DRG cap patient and that patient deteriorates and needs to be brought back to the ICU, your cost per patient per day is much higher in these areas and typically also extends the length of stay. So there's a very clear ROI that we can calculate for our customers, which typically amounts to a payback time of less than a year, which is very good for hospitals, and they really see that, and it's very intuitive. But you need all three value propositions. So I see I'm running out of time here, so just 2 words on where we're going, what's next. So obviously we want to expand in the hospital, so we're still at that starting point, but it's looking very good. We will also cover some other areas after we kind of target our focus areas, post-surgical oncology. We will go to telemetry, we will go to other areas inside the hospital where continuous monitoring in a mobile fashion is very valuable. But we're also going outside of the hospital, so post-discharge monitoring is a big topic, obviously. Qualcomm being one of our investors, they have the TUNET platform, so we will introduce a partnering solution where we will monitor patients outside of the hospital after they leave the hospital to not have them come back to the hospital. And that's really kind of on the roadmap for end of this year and next year. All right, thank you.